Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. I have my eyes back, I have my vision back on a weekend when I really didn't need it or want it. I would love to be able to unsee what I just saw at the Emirates Stadium. I've said it before, I always go to that place with the lowest, well, I thought the lowest possible expectations, and anything else would be a bonus. It's very rare that is anything else that is a bonus, but it occasionally happens. I was quite astounded that on this occasion, even my lowest of expectations were lowered. Well, or what happened was lower than them. Oh my goodness. I mean, I know apologising has become a habit at Tottenham Hotspur, but there just always seems to be something for them to say sorry to the fans for. And this was just another apologetic day. Spurs managers apologise. The players are constantly apologising. I think it just wore thin for everyone a while ago, a long time ago. Just there's more apologising at this club than there is daring and doing, and Sunday just brought another example of exactly that. I'm saying Sunday because it's technically Monday now when I'm recording this. Spurs have not won at the Emirates Stadium now for 15 years in the Premier League, and yet still managed to find a new low, I felt, in a lot of respects in the way they played. This, for me, it was not a battle between two North London rivals. Not at all. It felt, to me, from the off, like an FA Cup tie. Like this small lower league team going to the big Premier League club and just trying to set up in a way and cling on, frustrate, annoy, kill the game a bit, and maybe just nick something, anything from a set piece. That's not what Tottenham Hotspur should be doing or playing in any sense in a game like this. I think Thomas Frank's whole tactical setup for this match, it just said it all. It was like a clear message to his players that kind of said, you're not really good enough in a straight shootout against what was a bit of an understrength Arsenal team. I know Spurs missing three key attacking players, long-term ones anyway, but also Arsenal were missing players at both ends of the pitch. And I just felt that everything had this real negative feel about it. It was like, oh, let's just go and see what we can do. Maybe we can frustrate them and annoy them and grab something out of this game. There was no kind of real belief in it. I think it just all stemmed from that. I mean, they started with a back three, which in itself isn't that bad. You can definitely have a back three and still play with purpose and an attacking style, but they didn't. They just kept hitting the ball long to a lone striker who couldn't really hold it up. They were looking for set-piece gains, playing the percentages, utilising Kevin Danso's giant long throws. That's all good, I think, for a manager's first competitive game, let's say the PSG game. I thought that was the right move at that right time, when his philosophies and his ways of playing football are not firmly imprinted yet in the club. However, I mean, we're more than 3 months into the season now, and it's difficult to see what Thomas Frank has imprinted on this Tottenham side in terms of a positive attacking style of play at this point. It's difficult to see that. And yes, he pointed to Mikel Arteta having 6 years to develop that at Arsenal. But, Thomas Frank is those 3 months into the season, an extra month into pre-season. That should be enough to at least put in the processes that lead to a team being able to create chances. And a lot of chances. Well, some chances would be nice. But to have an Austrian international's arms being your chief creative threat, it's not exactly what Danny Blanchflower's envisioned when he said, famously, the game is about glory. It's about doing things in style and with a flourish, about going out and beating the lot, not waiting for them to die of boredom. We're going to look at that quote, then we're going to go to Opta's stats from yesterday's game, which showed that Spurs are responsible now for the two lowest XG totals in a Premier League game this season against Arsenal, 0.07 and Chelsea 0.1. 007 against Arsenal. There was nothing Bond-like about that performance. There was no panache. There was nothing exciting about it. Felt like the Skyfall was coming though. I was trying to think desperately of other James Bond films that could fit it. Please have fun in the comments. We need to have some fun because that was not fun. Please go for it with Bond titles that kind of fit that nicely. There was no man with the golden gun whatsoever. Doctor, no more of that. I'm going to stop there because it's even annoying me. But like I said, this is a team that is meant to dare and do, and it's doing neither at the moment. Even Thomas Frank said himself when he arrived in June, he came out with a quote, and he said this at before at Brentford. I always say this one-liner: if you don't take risks, you also take risks. It's important we take risks. Risk is you need to play forward. I'm sorry, but this current Tottenham team are about as risky as being hit by a feather-stuffed pillow wrapped in bubble wrap. It's just there's no risk whatsoever in this team right now, other than to our just mental health and well-being and watching them. They're not a fun watch right now. I asked Thomas Frank, one of my questions after the game was like, with so many things that were so poor about the performance, what disappointed you the most about it? And he kind of exhaled a bit, looked around the room, and he kind of thought about it, and he just said, where should I start? This is, of course, hugely disappointing that we didn't perform better in this game against Arsenal, our biggest rivals. I can only apologise to the fans for that. I was very confident on Friday when we spoke that we would be competitive today, and we weren't over the 90 minutes. We tried to come here and be aggressive and press high and in spells go after them. We didn't succeed with that bit. We didn't manage to get near enough to them in the situations we could. It means we got pushed back and got a little too passive. It looked like we were running after them. When we finally got on the ball, we were not good enough to get out of those situations. No matter how painful it is to admit, they are definitely 6 years down the line, and we are 4 months down the line. But even with that, I was still expecting much more from us today. Not that we could dominate over 90 minutes, but that we could be as competitive as we were against Man City and PSG. Look, being competitive should be a base requirement. It's like trying hard. It's like you should be competitive at this level in the Premier League against another Premier League side. Danny Blanchard, he never said the game was about being competitive. It was about glory, not being competitive. It frustrates me when the aspirations are that low, I think. At the Emirates Stadium, on this Sunday evening, Spurs mustered just 3 shots. 3 shots across the entire game. All of them came in the second half, and all of them came from outside the box as well. 2 of them were from the boot of Xavi Simons, who was not deemed even worthy of starting the game, and instead had to be brought on in the second half when it had all gone wrong. Was it about the half-hour mark? Before that, Spurs' tactics pretty much, as the quote we'd already said from Danny Blanchard, had kind of been to wait for everyone inside the ground, and including their opponents, to die of boredom. But they didn't die of boredom. They scored lots of goals. And it's not a sustainable way for a side like Tottenham to play football. It's just not. And it got the result it deserved. Nobody can have any complaints about that scoreline today. And of course, the script writers of it all would delight in the fact that it was Emre Eze who tore Tottenham apart, scored a hat-trick. It was just cruelty to the extreme. But again, a big player that Spurs weren't able to get through the door, obviously for the reason that he wanted to go to Arsenal. There's no two ways about it. And of course, he's going to haunt Spurs. He hasn't even been that great for Arsenal. Speaking to some of the Arsenal reporters, and they've said his performance has kind of been quite up and down, and this was by far his best performance. He saved it for Tottenham, which is great fun. Not. And I think what annoyed me even more about his hat-trick was not only the fact that it was Eze and he scored a hat-trick, but the fact that there were pretty much 3 identical goals. Spurs didn't learn from one goal to the next. They just get gifting it to him around the edge of the box and saying, oh, go on, you couldn't do it again. Oh, he's done it again. Okay, we'll give it to him this time. He's not going to, oh, he's done it again. It's like, where's the learning? Where's the progress? It was so frustrating to watch. And obviously it all started from Leandro Trossard's very nice goals, to be fair. Touch, turn and hit from, I think it was Mourinho's lofted ball into the box, which I think the doggy was playing Trossard onside for that one. It was every move. There was pretty much one Spurs player going, I've got it, lads. as into the Arsenal players, I'm going to play you one side. I think Mickey van der Ven certainly had one later on. I can't remember which goal it was, but it was just so poor. And it was, obviously the only kind of brief interruption to the misery we had was a quite frankly remarkable Richarlison goal, which was brilliant from just over the halfway line. Just one of those inch perfect ones that David Raya's backpedaling and no chance. Came about from a lovely tackle from João Paulinho, who appeared to be the only Spurs player that got the memo that this was a derby. He was launching himself into everything, trying to win everything, chasing everything down. Even at 4-1 down in added time, he was racing around trying to chase stuff. It's like everyone else just felt it was some random game they were playing. It's like someone had whispered in his ear, "It's a derby." You shouldn't have to be whispered in your ear that it's a North London derby. It was, unfortunately, it ended up being a bit of the Eze show. To put it kind of into context, Eberechi Eze had 7 touches in the Spurs box. In total, Tottenham had 4 touches in the Arsenal box. All of the players' touches combined, 4, and Eze had 7 purely by himself in the Spurs box. Just Spurs were just kind of rooting for like these hopeful punts up the pitch. Yes, I said hopeful punts, just in case anyone wasn't listening properly. That were meant, I guess, to stick with Richarlison, and they just rarely did. I remember 1 or 2 where he did quite well and battled away, fell to the floor, kept the ball at his feet, but ultimately he was just so alone, he was so isolated. There was just no one really getting up there to work with him, and once he had the ball, what was he going to do with it? It was going to give it away. And then there was Danso's long throw, which weirdly, after all the build-up, and the kind of having him in the team as another option. It was essentially a team of giants where set pieces should have been great for Spurs. But they won so few set pieces, they didn't really take advantage of it. And there was only the one long throw that I can remember. And the only thing it wasn't a bad long throw. Danso's long throws are good. And it caused a couple of problems. I think it was a foul at the end of it. But what I did remember kind of noticing about it, how upset Andreas Georgian, the Spurs set piece or restart coach, got. Because I think it was because the Arsenal subs were kind of dotted around where Kevin Danso was meant to throw the ball. And I don't know whether that was a planned disruptive move from Arteta or his own set-piece coach, Nicolas Jova, who worked under Thomas Frank, or it was just unfortunate they happened to be there at that time, but it certainly wound up Andreas Georgian. And it was playing a slight part in kind of Danso not being able to have the full run that he wanted to do. And look, Thomas Frank says that set pieces, long throws, they should be focused on by teams because they're big routes towards goals. And that's absolutely right. They are. They're an important part of an armoury, but they shouldn't be the main part of the armoury. And that's the issue right now. They need to be an addition to creative attacking football as well, rather than used as the dominant approach to a team's play. And look, it should be made clear. Thomas Frank does not want Tottenham to play dull football. And his Brentford teams over the season have produced some lovely football, exciting stuff. They scored plenty of goals with the likes of Tony and Buemo and Visser up front. They've been a team that have torn sides apart, and in different ways. I've said this before. In some seasons they were more kind of counter-attacking side. In other ones they were more possession hungry and would build through the phases up front. But he needs to sort it out at Spurs. He needs to find a way to get this Spurs team clicking quickly, because the club's fans and the media, no one's going to have the patience to wait for the likes of Dejan Kulusevski and Dominic Solanke to come back and then spend weeks trying to get sharp and fit again. There's no time for that. Obviously, James Maddison, if he comes back this season, is going to be right at the end of it. And there's no time to wait for the January transfer window when, the Lewis family are going to, as he made clear on Friday at the press conference, Thomas Frank, he said that he believes that they are going to back them in the transfer window. But that's a way off now. There's a lot of football to be played before they get anywhere near bringing a transfer in. And he needs to improve what they're doing from an attacking sense. And I asked him, I said, look, you're months in now and we're talking about the lack of creativity. I said, that must be concerning to you. And he said, it is concerning, of course. We're looking very hard to try to make that better. But sometimes it's not only playing out and finding a nice pass, but also in a game like this, if you see some of the situations where they won it high, Arsenal, then there was a little bit more open space. we didn't win it enough in those situations and then create from that. For me, the creativity, I know it was very low, but it was not my biggest concern today. I'm sorry, it should be one of his biggest concerns, because I think Tottenham supporters can forgive an unclean sheet, if we call it that, which sounds a bit iffy, but you know what I mean, if the team is creating and they're scoring at the other end. It kind of feels like his focus has been so much on shutting out the opposition that it's kind of not improved the team going forward. And look, even Guillermo Vicario, when he was talking about after the match, he couldn't even be bothered to complain about Eze's first goal when it flew past 2 or 3 offside players past him, even though they looked to be in his line of vision. He just said, I think the way the game went, it wouldn't have changed anything. There were 3 people in front of me, so of course they impacted me, but we didn't lose the game because of that, he said to Sky Sports. Talking of Sky Sports, Les Ferdinand was the pundit, apparently on, I think it was Soccer Sunday, and he did not hold back. He said, Tottenham were that bad today. It was embarrassing to watch. Halfway through this game, I was hoping I could go in the box with Michael McIntyre. I didn't want to watch anymore. You can't come to Arsenal in the North London derby and not put everything on the line. I think the manager got his tactics wrong today. He came here to be negative and to sit back and try and hold Arsenal off. I think that just sent out the wrong message to the players because they just couldn't get out again. Arsenal scored the first goal and that was it. Tottenham were done. It's not wrong. It's not wrong at all. I agree with all of that, really. And it was put to Thomas Frank in the press conference afterwards whether his tactics had set the tone for the entire day in this whole miserable Tottenham day. And he said, I'm a very big believer that no matter what system you play, you can be successful. I completely understand the question. I'll always take the full responsibility. The full responsibility will always be on me today when we didn't perform. I picked a team that played 5-4-1. I changed it at half-time. Very clever. 1 minute in, they scored. 3-0, then the rest is history after that. What I would say is that no matter if we played another system, we needed to be more aggressive and better in the duels. That doesn't matter to the system, but I need to take responsibility for everything today. And whether it sent a message to the players, he said, you can say that, but there are so many ways you can see it in that aspect. I've seen a lot of teams, including my own team, playing also 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, being very aggressive, positive, forward-thinking. That was not the case today, so I don't think it's about the system. I would say Xavi, when he did come on, brought a little bit more thrust to the way Spurs were playing, even if, yes, Arsenal did score a minute after the restart, but it wasn't really anything to do with Xavi. That was just poor defending, really, again. And he was asked why, with Xavi coming off the international break, where he'd scored for the Netherlands, he'd been increasing his performance. His performance had been getting better for Tottenham as well. Why didn't he pick him in this game? And he said, yeah, he has been getting better and better, but I think it was a tactical decision. Wilson, Odegaard, had done well, so it's one of him or Xavi or Wilson. Yeah. Sorry, I think it should be one of him or Xavi. I should say. Odegaard. It was one of those games. I have issues sometimes with his strength on the ball, and this was a North London derby. You've got to be strong in attack on the challenge, and he just didn't get himself involved enough. He touched the ball just 23 times in the entire game. Not one of those touches in the Arsenal box. He played 1 pass, I think. I read all game when I looked at the stats. Pretty much his attacking stats are just a row of zeros, barring 1 successful dribble. And look, that's not to single him out, because nobody really came out of the game with any credit, apart from probably Paulinho, who had 8 tackles, which was double anyone else on the team, and I think 3 more than Arsenal's top person, which was Declan Rice. And probably Vicario. I think Vicario for keeping the score down to 4-1. You could maybe argue if he could have done better with a goal or 2, but they were pretty tight. It was more I'd put it on the defenders than him, and he did save a couple of Eze's shots. I think he saved about 3 or 4 in total from Arsenal. But yeah, I mean, you look just elsewhere. I mean, yes, Richarlison added his name to Eric Lamela in the scoring a wonderful, incredible goal in a North London derby defeat. So no one really remembers the rest of what happened. But other than the goal, he was pretty poor, Richarlison. He battled away, but not really any quality or success. Same with the fullbacks. Thought Destiny Doggy. I've been really wanting him to kind of be back regularly in the side, and this was not a game to prove that point whatsoever. Jed Spence the same. Jed Spence again on the right, as he is good. I mean, I still wanted to improve his crossing. He put in one cross today. It was dreadful. It was like kind of waist height and just went into a massive Arsenal players at the front of the box. He's got this weird little thing he's in at the moment of having to do all the social media stuff. You know, this kind of not bragging. And I know it's good natured and it's kind of just having a bit of fun, but is this kind of like the whole Jed's penitentiary thing, and then kind of almost like laughing at how great he is. And like the other day, he did I think Xavi went to the Ledley King mural and did like a nice post about it, and Jed's kind of, I know it's probably not him, it's social media team or whatever, but he replaced his face onto Ledley King's. It was something about him being the king of Tottenham and stuff, and it's just like. It's kind of, I don't know, I think it's just coincided with actually a dip in his performances recently. I'm all for people having a bit of fun, and I know it's great when he was playing well and all this sort of stuff, but it just looks a bit daft when you're actually not playing particularly well. Just let your football do the talking, and that's the thing. With Jed, he's done that. He's turned his Tottenham career around brilliantly by letting his football do the talking. He's got into the England reckoning by letting his football do the talking. It's just, again, I'm probably very unfairly putting it on him when it may be people around him that are doing it. I don't know. I just wouldn't bother with all of that. It's just kind of almost setting yourself up for a fall, doing stuff like that just days before a North London derby and then not playing particularly well in that. Again, it's... I'm not singling him out at all because I could probably name you 9 out of the starting 11 that were pretty pants on the day. Look through the spine of that team. Romero, Van der Ven, Bentancur, none of them really set an example for anyone to follow. I think Van der Ven had a couple of decent defensive moments, but then, like I said, played... who was it? Was it Marino that collected the ball for one of the Eze goals, and he was played onside by Mickey van der Ven, and with Mohamed Kudus, he just looked like a player that was coming back from not playing for weeks, and he's going to have to get sharp again. It's just a really poor all-round performance that was just, it didn't even resemble a derby effort or performance in any way. It was very similar. He said afterwards it didn't feel it was similar to the Chelsea game, but I felt there was a lot in there that kind of was similar. But if anything, Arsenal were just more ruthless in this and just destroyed Spurs for their way of playing, I suppose. He also did had this quote after, which I felt was a little bit ill-advised, where he kind of pointed back to last season, and he said, "There's definitely a lot to work on still. I think it's fair to say we're very disappointed and unhappy with the performance today. I don't want to run away from that. As I said, I apologise to the fans. I think it's also fair to say where we're coming from. We finished 17th last year and we tried to build something which today didn't look like we tried to build something. It didn't. It didn't look like anything had been built really at all. And I kind of feel like pointing at that 17th place, when he came in the summer saying, we want to build on what Ange Postecoglou did, it kind of feels like now he's using the 17th place, and it'll only draw people to look back at that season and go, yeah, but they did win a trophy. They ended a trophy drought and brought in a European trophy. We're not going to go over old ground too much, but we know that 17th spot was mainly towards the end because they were putting the stronger team into the Europa League team and playing the second string, as it were, in the Premier League. So I'm not saying that was the entire season, but certainly towards the end, they would not have finished 17th if they decided, or Postecoglou decided, yeah, go on then, we need to sort out the Premier League form. They wouldn't have probably won the Europa League, but they would not have finished 17th in the Premier League. So I kind of feel I just don't think it's a very good thing to point back to. And if you're going to point around at what people did, you could look back at Spurs under Postecoglou, went to the Emirates in January earlier this year, and they had a centre-back pairing of Radu Dragusin and 18-year-old midfielder Archie Gray. Behind them, they had Antonin Kinski, who just arrived at the club, a young backup goalkeeper, and they lost narrowly 2-1. They took 3 times the amount of shots Spurs had at the Emirates this time around. They also hit the woodwork. Had 21 touches in the Arsenal box compared to the 4 that Spurs mustered on Sunday. Look, I know a defeat is still a defeat at the end of the day. I'm not saying, "Way, look at that," but I'm just saying it's a little bit daft to kind of point backwards, because if you're going to do that, then that can be looked at as well. And Thomas Frank obviously had his first choice back 4 out against Arsenal, a more defensively set up team. Yet they shipped 4 goals, and they needed a wonder goal just to get anything on the scoreline for themselves. It's just a poor look, I think. And look, the 2 ways to win the fan base's heart, really, aren't they, are to kind of impress in the derbies, that's a must, and win at home in front of like 60,000 or so kind of those supporters. That's your place where you're going to reach the most of them in a live setting. But he's struggling with both. And the fixture list is just sitting there going, hello, you're not going to like what's coming. It does not get any easier for him at all. Obviously, Wednesday, a trip to Paris to face the European champions, no less, in PSG, who will not be in the same physical state they were in August. Do not mistake that game for this game. This is a properly primed and ready PSG side, not one that had spent, a month off and had about a few days back in training. And then you've got what now feels like a huge game against Fulham. A lot of the media, we were all saying that. It's a home game where that record has to stop. But it also becomes a game, it's the one in the little string right now of fixtures to come that's like, okay, that's the one you kind of have to win. Which shouldn't be the case this early in the season in a way, but it is. Because you've then got a trip to Newcastle side that obviously just beaten Man City away and kind of got themselves back on track in the Premier League. And of course, then it's a home game against Brentford, Thomas Frank's old side. He won't want to get embarrassed against his old side. 2025 closes out with, what have we got? Slavia Prague game at home. Then a trip to Forest, obviously just beating Liverpool, who are then the next team that Spurs play at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Surely Liverpool can't remain in this slump they're in. And then it all closes out with the trip to Crystal Palace, who at this point in time are 5th in the table, just 2 defeats to their name. So it's a tough run. It really is. And he needs to find a way forward. Forward being the operative term, Thomas Frank, because Spurs have thrown out as many managers as they have apologies over the past, 6 years since Poch went. He needs to prove, Thomas Frank, that he can be as adaptable as everyone expected him to be, and just wedge something in that revolving door that is throwing so many managers out of Spurs. He's at a club now that it kind of feels like lots of change behind the scenes, at the hierarchy and everything, some big change, yet with performances like these recent ones, it kind of feels like on the pitch, it's the same old flip-flopping between one style of manager to another with little sense of direction. And that needs to be disproved. You could see the doubts growing among the fan base about the football that's being produced, the meekness of these derby displays against Chelsea and Arsenal, and the continuation, of course, of the dreadful home form. And I think some are already questioning whether the step up is too big for Thomas Frank. Coming from Brentford to a team that has such kind of high expectations. And look, I really want Thomas Frank to succeed. I think he's a really, really good guy. And I think what he wants Spurs to be playing is not the brand of football they're currently playing. I don't believe that. I don't believe that he is an inherently defensively minded coach. I think he is a coach that tries to embrace every element of a game. And right now, the elements are just wrong. They're not working for him. And look, when when Spurs appointed Thomas Frank, they did their homework. This wasn't someone that they just felt, it wasn't the way they appointed him was not actually in the flip-flopping style. We said this before, they used data modelling to identify 50 coaches that would suit exactly what they were looking for at the club, including a number of hypothetical candidates that weren't available just so they could get the strongest possible comparison matrix. And then to ensure they didn't make the mistakes of the past, they drew up a list of 10 criteria. You might remember this, I told you this back in the summer. But I looked it up because I thought it was quite interesting to kind of look back on this. There was 10 criteria for the prospective candidates, which included a track record of playing attractive football, developing young players, and good communication skills with the media as well. And they were just 3 of these 10 criteria. Obviously, they're looking for someone that would play attractive football. And when all of the criteria was taken into account, it resulted in this short list of 4 candidates. All of that quartet held meetings with the club, and Thomas Frank was a unanimous choice of the board and Johan Langer. So it all points to him having the ability to produce more than he and his team are currently showing. I kind of feel like there was a point under Mauricio Pochettino, it was about November-ish, funny enough, in his first season. I think it kind of started to begin with the Aston Villa game, didn't it? And the deflected Harry Kane free kick, when I think Pochettino had been doing it in a certain way in terms of just trying to fit in with what Spurs wanted rather than creating something new of his own. And he was kind of using some of the older players, some players that didn't fit his system, some players that just he didn't really get on with. And he just decided after that November, that Villa game mainly, stuff this for a lark. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging. And I feel like that's what Thomas Frank needs to do. He needs to come out swinging. And he must listen to his own mantra as well. If you don't take risks, you also take risks. So come on, take some risks. You know, especially like on Wednesday night. It's not a game that Spurs are expected to win against PSG. Just go out there and put in a good performance. Hurt them. You know, give them some shots to the body, shots to the chin, you know, go for a knockout blow if you can. Because it is a little bit of a free hit for me. It's not an essential match for Spurs to win. And I think they can go into it not just looking to shut up shop and trying to frustrate and annoy and be that kind of side in this game again. I think they can play a different. I think because PSG, I think, will be waiting for that this time, having seen it in August. So go out there, go swinging, and you know, do something. Just do anything. No more apologies. No more XG starting with a 0, and certainly no more meek and timid performances. You know, to dare is to do. It's time to be frank, not sorry. Just be Thomas Frank, because what's happening right now is it's just not making anyone happy whatsoever, and it does worry me a bit. It does, more than a bit probably, because it feels like if he can't start turning it around to what he wants it to be, then we know that slippery slope because we've seen it so many times. And like I said, I really want him to succeed as well. He's a really genuine guy. And you can see it has hurt him as much in the press conference afterwards. He tries to be as kind of level-headed and take the emotion out of it as possible. But you can see it's hurting him. It's hurting us as well. We have to watch that absolute slop. Just not good. Really not good at all. So that's it, really. I don't want to just go on. Nobody wants to hear an hour's worth of whinging about a North London derby defeat. It was painful enough in the first place. I was just looking because I noticed after the game they did the Spurs own interviews. Must be the quickest interviews I've ever seen. Paulinho fronting up again. I would like Romero to come out and talk more. I know his English is not great. Even if he does it in Spanish with subtitles underneath, I would like to see the captain come out and talk after games like this. It's it's not ideal in that respect because he's their captain. He's their leader, and I think in the same way as Hugo Lloris and Sonny had to come out with the multiple apologies that they would come out with over the years, I think he's got to come out, and I don't know if there's a fear about what he might say, whether he might be a little bit stronger than they want him to, but I don't think that's a bad thing too much. Sorry, I'm killing my voice now, so I'm going to probably finish there. PSG off to Paris. I'm on the Eurostar on Tuesday morning, which was remarkably cheap when booked, in case anyone else did it as well. Then we've got the press conference on Tuesday evening in Paris, which I think is about 6:40. I think it's around there, almost 7 o'clock. And then obviously the game on Wednesday night, which is a 9 o'clock kickoff over there, so 8 o'clock here. I'll try to do a video on Thursday on my return. And then, like I said, we've got that big against Fulham, which does feel like a bit of a must-win. It really does. Those home fans need to see a victory. They really, really do. We all do. Otherwise, that stadium, we know what it's going to be like. We know the way it will turn. And I fear it will start turning towards Thomas Frank as well. So, yeah, needs to start kicking around in the right direction. The Spurs are, I think they're 9th at the moment. They could be 10th tomorrow if United get a point. If they go to Everton, they're playing. Yeah, not good. Not good. One of the most insipid, dreadful North London derby performances I've seen for a long time. I know there's been some poor ones, but to go down like that without really laying a glove on your opponent was pretty pathetic. Let me know. Vent in the comments. Get it out your system by all means. Put your Bond titles in there as well, and anything else that springs to mind, and let me know how you think Spurs can get around their kind of missing players. With Decky, we had Graham Potter, Sweden manager, said, I think he said towards the end of December he was thinking near Christmas that you might see him back. It's definitely going to be next month. Solanke. Thomas Frank said on Friday that he's comfortable that he'll be back soon and he doesn't require further surgery. He said he's pretty sure that's not required. He is a big missing part of this team as well, Solanke. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know what I've done to my voice. It sounds like I'm crying at the performance. I should be, but I don't know. Let me know. Sorry, that was the point I was saying, wasn't it? Let me know in the comments how you would set up Spurs to get away and counter the lack of creativity right now. Xhami's got to be in there. He just has to play, doesn't he? Yeah, he does. There's a lot of players coming back. In the last couple of days. Obviously, there was the 8 of the 12 are all back in training now. It'd be interesting to see how many of them play against PSG as well. And I would imagine there should probably going to be likely to be about 5 or 6 changes again, but we'll see. Right, I've got to go because my voice is about to disappear. It's just given up on me. It's given up on Tottenham. It's given up on everything. Not a good weekend, but, it's Tottenham. We get an apology and we move on. Hopefully they move on to better things. But, as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.